Hi, welcome to Book Bites with Maggie. Joining me today, we have two special co-hosts. This is going to be like groundbreaking for us. We've never had two co-hosts. So we have Miss Jan, who is a former teacher and still is found in the classroom quite often. She's also on staff here and works the circulation desk. And this is, well, you go by Mrs. Voris, right?
Or Mrs. V.
Mrs. V in the Northwood school system, Wani school system, and she teaches English and is also on staff here. So this is going to be a fantastic episode of Book Bites where we're going to highlight books that are beloved by teachers and librarians, or also have teachers or librarians that have a positive impact or theme in the book. So we've got all kinds of genres here, and we're just going to talk about them. So this is our digital Reader's Advisory. So if you've never joined us for Book Bites, the way that this works is you are welcome to leave a comment and we will put those items on hold for you with your Napanee Public Library card. So just leave us a message and we will get that ready for you. Or you'll be able to find it on the shelf as well. We'll try to mention if books come in alternate formats. If reading a physical book is not for you, we do have other databases available like Hoopla and Libby that also have like e-materials that you can use with your Napanee Public Library card. Okay, so we all have great stacks here, and some of us have read multiples. So I'm going to start with one, and then if one of you guys wants to pick up after me, we can do that. So this one is one that I read last year, Under the Bayou Moon. This one is written by Valerie Fraser, how would you say that? Louisi? Lure, maybe? And it is a historical fiction book that we shelve in our inspirational fiction section. It's set in the late 1940s. And in this one, it takes place in Louisiana and Alabama. And I like this book because the main character, she is a transplant. And when she joins the super backwoods community, she is 100% an outsider. And then she is given a place of authority by becoming a school teacher to these kids who they just take education in any respect. Whatever they can learn from, that's what they're going to have because they just don't have the means to have all types of materials at their access. So she gets herself into a wonderful situation where she can be a positive influence, not only on the students, but on the parents of the students who find themselves in her classroom. So I really enjoyed this book. We do have it available as an e-audiobook as well on Libby. And I really enjoyed the pacing of this one. There is a little bit of a romance to it, and the diverse characters really set it apart for me. Have you guys read this one?
I have not.
Okay, so there you go. You can have that one on your radar. This is Under the Bayou Moon. Okay, go ahead. One of you want to do one?
I'll do What You Wish For by Catherine Center. I basically picked it up because I loved the cover. It was attractive. It caught my eye, but I ended up really liking it. It's on one level a romantic comedy. A school librarian falls in love with the school principal. But you can read it at a deeper level. I like the fact that the teacher was so perceptive. She really understood what kids needed and what kids wanted and advocated for that, even though sometimes there was disagreement and she came up against opposition. She also worked against some of her own personal fears and had to learn courage in her life. So I would recommend it. It's available as a book, an ebook, and an e-audio book here. It's What You Wish For by Catherine Center.
Have you read that one?
I have not. I
Oh.
do like the cover though.
It is beautiful.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
That's an actual reissuing of the cover. So they, like when they started doing more of them, they rebranded that one. So it has some of the same characteristics, but the large floral has to do with the storyline as well.
I do think I've read some of her other books. I recognize the titles.
So on a previous Book Bites, a while ago, I can't remember when, but we were talking about this author, Catherine Center, and I did not realize that her characters intermingle within the books. So that came up on a previous Book Bites.
Oh, that
so
will be fun.
Duncan
Duncan
the principal in that one, is a character, a sub-character in another book. And you get to know him previously as, well, like the main character does in that. So like you get to know him as this funny, quirky guy, and when he shows up in this book, he's like straight-laced, tie, like
Restricted.
principal, and so there's that disconnect. So that adds into the storyline that he is a different, something has happened, what made him different. And I didn't know that she did that with her characters. There's a lot of authors that do, but I didn't know she was one of them. So that was a treat for me, and now you're gonna have to go back and read some other Catherine Center
I
books
definitely
and
will.
see if you can find those. They're almost like hidden Easter eggs.
I will enjoy that.
Yeah. Okay, what do you have?
I'm going to choose Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. He is known for his historical fiction. A lot of students of mine have read his historical fiction. I don't know that they've read this, but I think our staff has read.
I think almost everybody. So this one's more middle grade than the teen books. Yeah.
And so it's actually, the main character's name's Amy Olliger. I'm not sure how you say her last name. But it is, they have found that a lot of their books are being censored and pulled from their library. So she decides she's going to have a banned book library out of her locker. And so she starts offering all the books that they can't carry in their library out of her locker. And so that starts a different whole other situation in their school. And so this is a book I think everybody needs to read with all the stuff that's going on in the world right now in our country with about censoring books, freedom of speech, and all of that. And Alan Gratz is one of the most giving authors I've met over the years. He is so giving in all of his author visits and everything. And if students contact him, he is always really quick to get back to them. And so I like this. Actually, one of the quotes that I really have liked, I like that you shared this. You are never too young to fight censorship. And I like that. It's available in, obviously, hardcover, e-audio, and I think that it's also offered in other ways, too.
Maybe it isn't.
Too.
Oh, probably, yeah. Okay, so this book, so I read it too, and I remembered when I looked up my Goodreads to see like what stuck out to me when this one, obviously that quote, and then I also wrote in there, I wish I could win the lottery just so I could get this book into the hands of everybody. Okay, but for those people who do not know what censorship is, give us a layman's term. What is censorship?
It is when you or someone comes along and pulls a book from a shelf or a library, and it can be locally, it could be from a public library, from a school library, it could be nationally, it could be anywhere.
So a book that they don't think deserves to have a place on a shelf no matter where it's at. And so it's a means of, you know, we're talking about censorship and freedom of speech. It's saying you can and cannot do that, and what your boundaries are and what you are allowed to say and do cannot infringe upon somebody else. So the same with a book. You can do or say something that's going to keep somebody else from reading what they want to read. So great themes, but I also felt like even though it was middle grade, it's written really young. There's so many good things in there for the adults that want to read it, that you're like, it just makes sense. If you have no idea what censorship is, he doesn't make you feel dumb for wondering, and he explains it in a way that's very thought-provoking. That was honestly one of the best books that I read that year. Yeah, it was very, very good.
And I like the new cover. This is not the original
cover.
cover.
This cover is not very
I like the original one better.
The new cover has like a cartoon. The characters are cartoonized on it, and it's very inviting. And it feels more like for that level that it's written for. What did we say? She's like 4th grade?
I think
she's pretty young.
So.
I mean, elementary school, right?
Yes, it is elementary school. It does not say on the cover.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, like, yeah. And then because I read that one, I went through and I read some of the books that had gotten banned and put into her locker library, which I thought was fun. This one, when did I read this? This is Parked by Danielle Svetkov. I hope I'm saying her last name correctly. This is going to be about Jean Ann's story. Her and her mom are just a twosome. It's always been just the two of them. And in this book, they start out in Chicago, and the mom, I can't remember if she loses her job or she needs to relocate, but they drive in their van cross country and end up in San Francisco. Now, as the mom is trying to find a new job in a kitchen, she leaves her daughter, who's kind of up to her own means, and they're living out of this van that they drove cross country in. And so it's the story of poverty, it is the story of homelessness, but the pacing of this book really drove the story. And I put a whole bunch of little post-it notes in here to kind of show you that as you're reading this book, it starts out with an overdue notice from her home library in Chicago. And so this is what it says. So it has literally like a list of all the books that she currently has checked out in Chicago. And then on it, it also says, there's a note from her librarian. Your fine is 25 cents a day per book, or $9.50 total. If these are not returned within 8 weeks, you will be fined for their entire value. Please call this branch if you cannot locate the missing items and you need to renew them. Thank you, your Chicago librarians. But then underneath it, you can tell in a different typeface that this says, Jean Ann, I was almost happy to see this overdue notice for you, and I pulled it out of the sorter so that I could add a personal touch. Isn't that what we like to do too? Where have you been? I don't think you have ever missed an entire week visiting the library before, or even a day for that matter. Our records show that this is your first ever overdue notice. What? Meanwhile, this place seems to be falling apart without you, Jean Ann. And we need you. Our candy bars bowl is overflowing, and I've got new releases to share with you. The help desk ladies are arguing over the ideal temperature in the stacks again, and we always count on you to break that tie. I hope you don't have a summer cold. Those are the worst. Remember, you raked through the library archives for ancient common cold remedies and found some. Nobody could think to look, Jean Ann, nobody. Alphabetically love, Marilyn Jablowski, who's considering reading the entire Stephen King canon, despite my fear of the dark, and needs your thoughts to address this delicate matter. You can totally feel the relationship between Jean Ann and her librarians who miss her so much. And as you're reading this book and time goes on, you get not only the overdue notice, but then you get billing notices, and then you get, we need our books back, and then we get a return to sender letter when her mail is no longer arriving at her house. The librarians go and they try to track her down. She's their beloved patron, somebody who they direly miss in their library. And so as our main character is in this midst of surviving her new circumstances on the streets of San Francisco, her librarians are missing her back home in Chicago. And so you get a sense of time and how much time is displaced between when they arrive in San Francisco and what is happening in their lives there and what's happening back at home. Fantastic book, highly recommend it. And it gave me the feels of Coyote Sunrise. Did you read that one?
Mm-hmm.
So that book has always stuck with me, and this is the only book that has done that since then for middle grade. So this one again is called Parked by Danielle Svetkov. We have it as a physical book, and you also can find it as an e-audio book in our collection. So really, really good. It is double spaced, so it looks much larger than it is, and you'll read it really, really fast. If this is one you want, or any of the other titles we've talked about, let us know in the comments. We'd be happy to get these set aside for you to pick up. Do you have another one you'd like to share?
I would like to share about the Children's Blizzard. And I'd like to say, first of all, that there are two books with the exact same title. One of them is nonfiction. The other is the one I'm going to talk about, which is historical fiction. But if you read them both, you'll find some strong similarities, because this book is extremely well researched, and a lot of the stories that she found from people who had survived the Children's Blizzard are coming up in her fictional characters. So it's very realistic to what happened. The nonfiction book is by David Laskin, but this is written by Melanie Benjamin. In 1888, there really was a blizzard that came up on the plains on a relatively warm day. Nobody was prepared. Of course, in 1888, they weren't checking their weather apps. And the blizzard appeared just as school was going to be let out for the day. And when you think about what school was back then, you have to realize you're talking about one-room schoolhouses, often taught by single young women with virtually no experience, no backup, no security. So they had to decide what to do as teachers when they looked out and saw that it was snowing. Do you send the kids home? Do you keep them in the schoolhouse and see what happens with the weather? And this tracks the story of what two teachers decided. They happen to be sisters. They're teaching in separate schools. One of them made what we would call now the wrong decisions. One of them made what we would call now the right decisions and became a heroine of the situation because most of her children survived. In reality, 235 children died because they were out in the midst of this blizzard and couldn't make it home. Many others lost hands, feet, fingers, and toes because of the frostbite that set in. So it was a very real situation, a very frightening situation, and the teachers often made the difference between life and death. And that inspired me, and I thought it was a great book.
I'm like, tragedy, you have to be in the right mindset for a good tragedy, and like one that you have to like set yourself up for what you know is going to happen.
I probably wouldn't have read it had it been totally fiction.
Yeah.
Oh, why do I want to do this?
Right.
To my mind. But the fact that it really happened.
Yeah, historical
drew
fiction
me
draws
in,
me too.
And I really liked it.
So when I was looking up other themes for that book, because it really did strike me, I also saw that there's a strong storyline with like immigrants in that. So it's like, it fits into some other books that have really captured my attention recently. So it's on my list to read for sure.
Very much so, because who settled the plains?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so that one, obviously we have as a physical book
We have
because
the
it's
book.
there in your hands. Do we have it in the other
We have
formats?
an audio book and we have an ebook. So all sorts of ways to read this.
Perfect. Have you read that one?
I have not, but it sounds interesting.
It really, really
Yes.
does. Okay, share another book with us.
All right. So another one of the books that I thought would be interesting is The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. And one of the reasons why I thought this would be interesting to share is because she is a master at writing about animals and writing intriguing stories that really draw you in. And this is actually based on a real live animal, a gorilla named Ivan, who is at, I believe, the Atlanta Zoo. And I believe he passed away not long ago. But when this was written in, let me look, I can't remember the publication date. It's been a while.
The summer of 19.
Copyright is,
Well, it
says
references.
12.
No.
It's hard to tell. 2017? It says
Is that
classic
right?
edition.
2017.
It
I
has
like
to be.
It was
No,
right after she
that's
came out.
copyright
I got
12.
to meet her.
It says 12. Text by Catherine Applegate.
Has it been that long?
I bet.
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
I got to meet her just as it was coming out.
Because- Yeah.
It doesn't have the Newbery date on it, does it?
No,
I don't
it
think
doesn't.
So this is a Newbery Award winner.
yeah,
So it
Newbery
has
Award
definitely been well read and well received
Yes.
by so many people.
Yes.
And there's a follow-up too. So if you're doing Expand Your Horizons, one of our 2022 themes that we're supposed to be doing, our tasks is duology. And I can't find it now on this
Yeah,
paper.
they would be perfect.
That would be perfect for a
Duology.
duology. Oh, down here, a series of 2. So the one and only Ivan is the first one, and the one and only Bob
Yes.
is the dog that's in the story. He has his own
Right.
follow-up book
Right.
in that one. So that would be a
And
great one for
so
that.
this has a lot of twists and turns in it. It has a lot of ups and downs, and you cheer Ivan on, and there's a lot of, I would say you have to have Kleenexes when you read this one, definitely. I used to gauge all of my books that I read by how many tissues I used.
I like
There
that.
was one summer
Kleenex reviews.
that I read that I couldn't go anywhere without packages of tissues with me, and it was when my children were younger, and I hated it because I would be at their athletic events, and I would always have tissues, and I would be like bawling, tears streaming down my face, and so this was like one of them. I think I was actually reading back then. It's been a while since they were younger, and this was one of them, and it was like terrible because people would say, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm just reading these books."
So I was always finding it for other customers coming into the library, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read this one. And the first time I read it was with my kids. So I was not prepared. We're like reading a couple chapters each night before bed, and then I'm like, why am I sending my kids to bed with these themes of, animal cruelty?
Yes.
And like, we are such animal lovers in our family that it was
too.
hard to grasp. Yeah.
Right. But
So
such a
Ivan
good-
is a shopping mall gorilla. He is housed in, I don't even know what you call it, like a cubicle-sized room, something way too small for a silverback gorilla. So it is a tearjerker.
But it's still a good story.
Yeah. How's that, Jan? Would you read this book?
I would. I was
Yeah.
just wondering, is it a children's book?
It is.
Is it an adult book? Because it sounded like it could go either way.
It's a middle grade book.
Okay.
And it looks really big, but like there's so much white space in it.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
Lots
they're
and
almost
lots of white
like
space.
short stories and short snippets.
Yes.
But you
It's a
get
quick
into the
read,
mindset
actually.
of a gorilla.
And there are illustrations. There are illustrations throughout it.
It really is good.
Yes, it is very good. Highly recommended.
By librarians and teachers everywhere.
Oh yes, definitely. There's all kinds of.
I love it.
You talk
Such
me
a
into
good
it.
book.
So we've already had, okay, so we've had historical fiction, we've had romance, we've had inspirational fiction, middle grade. Have I caught them all? I think so. And now we're going to go into sci-fi fantasy. Because, you know, teachers and librarians are everywhere. Have you guys read The Midnight Library?
I've been wanting to read this.
Okay,
and I
so
just haven't
I'm
gotten
going to try to talk
it
you
yet.
into it.
Oh,
You ready?
You don't have to. I already want to read it. I just haven't gotten to it. Do you know how long my to be read titles are, Liz?
So this
Good
one
read is
is
ridiculous.
Matt Haig's book. It was on the Good Morning America book club list. And I honestly, okay, so I picked it up because everybody was talking about it. I did not realize that it was going to be sci-fi fantasy. That is not my go-to genre. Not at all.
So mine.
Because I'm not like
I
into the
love
whole
that.
world building. But in this book, we have our main character. Her name is Nora. I had to just look and remind myself. Her main character's name is Nora. She's going through a lot of like mental health issues, which May is Mental Health Issues Month, so we've got lots of books with those themes. This is a story about her and her desire to kind of like end her life. She's not happy. And halfway through the book, or like after you jump into it, it comes down to the, do I want to stay where I'm at, or can I make a change that's going to impact the rest of my life? That seems like a simple, not fantastical, not science fiction way of thinking. In our story, The Midnight Library, it is I think the overall question that you're gonna get is, if I did this differently, if I went to this college instead of that college, if I moved into this house instead of that house, if I maintained this friendship instead of that friendship, what would have happened to the course of your life? So in our story, Nora, she enters into this realm where she's in the Midnight Library, and each time she picks up a book, it is like almost like a new biography for her, a self-biography. If she would have done this thing differently, she gets to jump into what her life would be. The kicker is, if she decides it's not the life that she wants, she can get out, close the book, but she can never go back to it. So then she has to decide, crap, when she jumps into the next life, it might not be any better, but it could be worse than the one she just left, but she can't go back. Once she has opened up that portion, she can't go back to it. So she's always trying to deviate between stay where I'm at or jump into one of these realms and like remain there. The Midnight Library is actually, I don't know if you would say like maintained and organized, but there is a person in charge of it. In Nora's case, it is her beloved childhood librarian. So like Miss Audrey was my childhood librarian. So like it was easy for me to picture her in this role. So she's there organizing it, and then when Nora would jump out of a scenario, then her children's librarian would be there and say, well, what would you have done different? Or, well, try this one instead. And so you get a total sense of Nora as a person in different walks of life and why she is the way she is because of the things that she's experienced. It is like nothing else I have ever read before. And so it really kept my interest, but because it has such fine details, it could be very, very real to some people, and that can be a turnoff. If it makes them really delve into themselves, it's like like a trigger warning. So it's gotten really high accolades, and there's been other people that are like, nope, too much, not doing it. So it's one that you want to be prepared for before you actually pick it up. It's not necessarily just a happy-go-lucky book because of some of the themes that are inside of it. So this is, again, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. We have it as a book, an ebook, and an e-audio title. And if you would like any of those, let us know, and we can put them aside for you on the physical shelf, or if you need help accessing Libby or Overdrive or Hoopla, we can do that as well for you.
That reminds me of Jasper Ford's books, like his was it Wednesday next, Tuesday next?
Are those mysteries?
Nope. They are, they're kind of along that vein. They're kind of science fiction, fantasy.
Oh,
And
but it's a series.
But it's a series, yes.
Oh, okay. So I had never heard of anything that was similar to this. So I will Jasper Ford. Do we have them?
We used to. I don't know that we do anymore.
If we don't, we could do interlibrary loan, right? That's a service that we offer here at the library, that if we don't have access to a book, we can get it for you. And then you return it to us and we ship it back to the lending library. So that's something else that we can offer.
Jasper Ford is a little more humorous, it sounds like.
Oh, this is
than this.
like, it's hard stuff, but it really makes you think. Okay, so I have another historical fiction one here. This is, let's see, this is The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict. She's written so many things, and now off the top of my head, I cannot think what she's written. If there's like one with a green cover.
Yes.
What is that? What's that book?
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about, yes.
Oh, like there's like
Yes.
an elegant green title. I cannot remember. She wrote Carnegie's Maid.
Oh, that was good.
That one was good,
that
too.
was really good.
But what is the green one?
Um,
I can't remember. Here we go. Benedict.
Yeah.
Marie Benedict.
Carnegie's
see
Maid was yellow.
It was
It's
yellow,
very-
and then this
it's
one's
yellow.
kind of got the red colors to it. So if we think about it, we'll add that. Okay, let's be pondering. All I can think of is the Evelyn Hugo book, because that's green too, but that's not it. That's not hers. Okay, so in this one, The Personal Librarian, this is about Bella DaCosta Green. She was born Isabella Greener, and she is actually part African American, but she is very light skinned. So in the book, or in historical instances, because being an African American limited you to what you could do in your status in life, she would often fib and tell people that she was light skinned because of her Portuguese heritage, which was not true. It is the story of a girl who is overcoming her circumstances. She has several sisters. They all have varying skin tones. But in Bella's case, their dad, who is a Harvard graduate, he's often pushing his girls to excel and to do wonderful things with their lives. She tries to change her backstory, and so she changes her name and she becomes J.P. Morgan's personal librarian. You guys are familiar with who J.P. Morgan is. Okay, so obviously lots of influence, lots of money, and he is trying to start his own personal physical library, and so he has all this money, and so Belle is put in charge of like being finding and recruiting and purchasing rare manuscripts, books, and artwork for this personal library to keep it cataloged and at the go, and maintaining this growing collection of massive size. And through this, she gets to know all these different people in society, and she joins J.P. Morgan in all these different events. She really rises in status and stature, but it's all balanced so precariously on her fibbing about her identity, because if people knew that she was an African American, I mean, she would go all the way to the bottom, and not even that. I mean, she lied on top of that. So it is, you can feel it building and building and building. I didn't love it, but the story was so different than anything that I had ever read before. It was worth mentioning in this case. And a rare books librarian, that's very cool. The Personal Librarian we have as a book, an ebook, an e-audiobook, and a book on CD. I'm holding a piece of paper here because our physical book is currently checked out. If that is the case with any of our titles, when you go to look for them, we can put them on hold for you, and we'll still get those available. Okay, so we have a couple more. Can you share what you got there in front of you, Miss Jan?
Patricia Polacco is one of my favorite children's authors.
Mine too.
And so I'd like to share a book by her. She actually wrote a series of books about teachers. She wrote lots of other things too. I recommend them all. We have a whole shelf, read every one. But the ones she wrote about teachers are close to her heart because she's really writing about herself and the teachers that she had that made a difference in her life. And this one brings tears to my eyes every time because I taught students who had learning disabilities, and this teacher, her teacher, Mr. Falker, I guess doesn't have an N in it, said that something was wrong. She was acting like she was reading, but she wasn't really reading, and she was bright. but she couldn't read, and she was pretending. And he noticed that, and he did not give up on her. He said, there's a way. And he kept trying until he found it. And she learned to read. She also learned to draw and to do art, and became very successful later on in life as a children's author and children's illustrator. So it just goes to teach so many lessons about how you work with kids and how you teach kids. And this one, at least, turned right around and said thank you, and passes that gift along to others as well.
I love
So
it.
very close to my heart, and I would recommend it. We have it as a children's picture book here at the library. There's also an e-audio available. And I just like the fact that she honors teachers, principals, and people who work in schools.
I like it. Kelly's gotten to meet Patricia
Yes.
several times.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Hear her speak, and she just is wonderful. I mean, the illustrations she does, writes and illustrates her books, and just, I mean, I cannot read one of those books without getting choked up.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's her books dedicated to teachers or if it talks about her family history. I just, seriously, I cannot read one of those to my classes without getting all choked. I get choked up just talking about it.
Yeah.
Oh my word, I'm not an emotional person at all. I mean, they're just wonderful.
Yeah.
And she's just,
And the pictures are beautiful.
oh my word, can you show a couple of those pages? I mean, they're just, and the one she writes about her art teacher, I can't remember, Mrs. Chen, is that her name?
Chun.
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 Yeah, and they're just wonderful.
I love this one.
They're just like full page illustrations. Yeah.
And you see her expression, and you know
Yeah.
how she feels.
Yeah.
Right.
She's frustrated.
And she's local. I would consider a local author. She lives up in Michigan.
Michigan,
What, an
that's
hour and a
far.
half, 2 hours away? So, and she's very generous with her time. So, wonderful.
I haven't read that one recently. I'm gonna have to take that
Oh
one
yeah,
home.
not recently, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I think she recently had a book published. I mean, she's constantly having some things
Yeah.
published, but I can't remember her last book published. But yeah. All right, we'll continue with the children's book theme. We have Because of Mr. Turrup. There are, 4 books we determined, I
I think so, yeah.
But this is the first one by Rob
Bouye.
Bouye, thank you. It's been a while. Both of my daughters, their 5th grade teacher, shout out to Mr. Simons, read this book with them, and I remember they were very, very touched by it. It's been a while since I have read it, but Mr. Turrup had a huge influence on his students. And so it's just from different viewpoints of students in this particular 5th grade class. And just talks about how teachers can have a huge impact on their students, and I think this was perfect in this particular class from this particular teacher.
So, like, as the series progresses, it adds in all the characters of the classroom. It's very diverse.
Okay.
And I feel like,
I haven't read all the books. I've read the first
I
2.
haven't read the last one, and I
Okay.
can't even remember what it's called. But I mean, fantastic books to read, not only for kids but for
Right.
adults alike.
Oh yes.
So we have that one downstairs in our children's chapter book section. Is it in any other formats? Did we mention that? I think it is.
Audiobook and ebook. It
Yes.
says.
Okay, so different
Yes.
things.
I must confess it's not there right now because I have checked it out. I meant to have it read by
Wonderful.
today, and
Yes.
it didn't happen. But as soon as I'm done with it, I will bring it back.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So if you want it before Jan brings it back, you can
Yes.
place it on hold.
Right. Now, I have
love
not
it.
listened to the audiobook, so I don't know. I'm sure that is absolutely
It's probably well
wonderful.
cast.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. But
Nice.
yeah.
I like it, and that one has multiple covers too. So I'm not even sure if that's the same cover as the one that we have here. I just printed that off the internet. Because isn't there another one where it's like a snowball?
I think that's the one that I read originally years ago because my children
Yeah.
are in college now, so I'm sure I probably read the original
Yeah,
one.
I don't know which cover that is. Just a Google image, but yeah. So we have that in our library.
Definitely a good read.
This one is, definitely not new to Book Bites. So if you have tuned into any of our other episodes, I'm sure this one has been mentioned at least 3 or 4 times. The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek is the first in 2 books. This most recent one just came out last week, and that's The Bookwoman's Daughter. But Kim Michelle Richardson takes Appalachia and she takes pack horse librarians from Roosevelt's initiative to add literacy to places that would not normally have access to it, and they take books and they get them into the hands of the people. Now in this story, there's more themes than just the pack horse librarians. So what's the other one? The Giver of the Stars by Jojo Moyes. That one is very similar in that standpoint. What sets this one apart is in the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, you also have in it that our main character, who is, what's her real name? I had to write it down. Cussy Mary Carter, she's referred to as Blewett because she suffers from the skin condition from her family where her skin is actually blue. So historically, there is a family that is from the Appalachian area, Appalachian Mountains, where they are all struggling with that condition where their skin is blue. Now, this story specifically does get into her medical condition and why she looks like she does. And then it also has other storylines about racism and poverty. And the poverty is not a reason why you would want to experience Appalachia, but the story, as you're following along and she's learning how to ride this donkey that she's never rode before through all these bends in the story building, you get to like picture it in your head. And I think scene building is so key when it's a location that you've never actually been to and never experienced, that you depend on the author to give you those visual cues. And Kim Michelle Richardson does that in this book. So you have many different themes going on, but it's a fantastic story, and I am excited to read the second book. So I'm on hold. There's quite a list of people who are trying to get a hold of that. Our first book here, the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, is checked out, but we can't put you on hold for it. We do also have it as an ebook and an e-audio book, and I'd highly recommend it. Have you guys read this one?
I have not.
I loved it.
Oh, it was good,
It was
right?
good.
So now I'm excited to read that second one. Okay, now I know I have read this one. Have you read this one?
I have not.
Okay, we're gonna
I
talk
might
to you.
have to add it to my list.
Yes,
you
okay,
will.
so here's our
Okay.
last one for today's episode.
So this is Speak by Lori Halse Anderson, and this has hit the 20th anniversary, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and this is the new cover for it, which I think is fantastic, so much better than the original one. And this touches on a very sensitive topic. It has the young lady, and actually I have to just preface this before I talk about the book. I teach freshmen mostly, and we do a lot of book clubs, our project-based learning. And this book, several years ago when I first started doing this, we had a group of young men who read this book, and they talked about how this had such an impact on them that they never thought that this book would impact them the way it did. And it is, and actually it's based on Lori Halse Anderson's personal experiences, which I think, and if you have never heard her speak, you should Google her and watch some of her videos, because she is the most well-spoken advocate for people who have dealt with sexual assault. And that's why this book is so profound. And that's why a lot of people have an issue with this book. If you want to go back to the banning books issue, they have an issue with it because they don't think that teenagers should be reading this. But if you would have heard those young men who are now in their 20s talk about this topic and reading this book and not realizing how important it is to hear both sides of a story, and for people to speak out, as this is called Speak. The main character is going into high school, a freshman, and she goes to a party and she is assaulted, but she doesn't talk about it at all. She doesn't talk at all her freshman year. And nobody can understand why. And that's why she's afraid to speak about what happened to her. And so eventually she does, and so she receives the help that she actually needs.
So the main character is the student, but
Yes.
the person I think that makes the biggest impact on her is her art teacher.
Our teacher, right?
So it fits perfectly into our theme with our librarians and our teacher
Right.
influences.
Mhm.
So the art teacher in this book is assigning draw a tree, or no, it was like a stationary object
Right.
or something like that.
Mhm.
And so as the year progresses, you get a visual representation on the healing and indecisiveness that is happening within her
Right.
as she's going through this, and you see it in the way that she's drawing this picture of a tree. So the illustration here that's on the cover, if you can't, I don't know if you can see it. So it's obviously it's a silhouette of a person, but it's also limbs and branches, and it's wonderful. So this one is going to be in our fiction section of the teen area, but the follow-up, Shout, is going to be more in our biography section, and it is a follow-up to Speak, but how little society has changed in 20 years.
Well, and that it's actually Lori Halse Anderson's memoir, and it's written in verse. So it's like a novel in verse, but it's like a biography, memoir in verse.
Yeah.
And it is, I want to say, raw and
very raw.
much to the point, but it is so poignant and so memorable. I actually almost like it better than this.
Okay, so this one is written like chapters. Okay,
It's like a regular chapter.
It's a regular book. Okay, but the theme of art is so strong in it that I don't even know when it was. A couple of years ago, a graphic novel adaptation came out about this one. Have you read that way?
Oh, I have like 2 copies in my classroom library, and I think I've replaced it several times.
Oh yeah,
already.
they just fall apart. But you get to see that progression of her artwork.
Right.
And
It's
is one of the
phenomenal.
few books that I'm like, wow, how it can take a book that is, there's a Q&A at the back here. A book that is almost 200 pages long, and then turn it into panels and speech bubbles and illustrations, and honestly, just, I wouldn't say make it better, but it is so equally profound that to read them together or simultaneously or back to back is the way to go. So, wow, we have had so many good books.
Yeah, and a few years ago, a local high school took this and turned it into a play.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to go, but I think some of our other staff or somebody went and saw it, and it said it was just amazing.
Yeah,
and I thought,
it voices the concern of,
Yes.
the power of teachers and librarians and the impact that they can have, a positive impact that they can have in so many walks of life, whether it be homelessness, or whether it be getting books into the hands of the people, or physically reading to somebody who is not reading on their own. We've got wonderful representation in all of these books. We will leave a list in the comments, so if you hopped in halfway through the taping here or whatever, you can see all the books that we have mentioned. Again, if any of the books that you want are piquing your interest, let us know in the comments. We'd be happy to set them aside for you. You can also stop in, check the stacks, and we'd be happy to help you look them up. Or you can also log into your Napanee Public Library account on our website, and you can place holds yourself. We look forward to having you next time on our future episode of Book Bites. Our second episode in May is going to feature books that would be a great beach read. So I hope that you will come back. Join us for a future episode. Thank you so much to our co-hosts.
You are welcome.
And you guys did so good. And I would love to have you back joining us for
Yes,
another
lots of fun.
episode. So thank you for watching, and we will see you guys next time.